My name is Colin Valentine. I'm the chairman of CAMRA, Campaign for Real Ale. I'd like to introduce Bob Neill, who is the Minister for Community Pubs. Before the last election, there was no such post as the Minister for Community Pubs, and I'd like to think that our lobbying for such a post has borne some fruit. So I'll just, without any further ado, hand you over to Bob.
Well, thank you very much, Colin, and I am delighted to be the first Minister for Community Pubs. John Healey claims he had a sort of role in pubs, but I would say to him mine's much more clear, because that's part of the coalition agreement. Delighted to be here. Can I say, yeah, CAMRA did make a difference as far as that's concerned, because what you have done is consistently work to raise the profile of pubs and of beer. And beer as a fantastic British-grown product. And I think CAMRA's done a huge amount in that regard. So the fact that I had to have my arm twisted up my back to take on the task of Community Pubs Minister is partly down to CAMRA's lobbying. And I want to say also, huge support that I've had since taking up that job from the industry as a whole, right across all the sectors. And that's been hugely important too. I think the other thing that's worth saying is that we're very lucky that there is a very strong group of folk within Parliament who understand beer, who are enthusiastic about beer and actually work very hard for beer. And I'm delighted to see a number of my parliamentary colleagues here today. There's Karen Bradley over there, there's Andrew Griffiths over there, Greg Mulholland, Nigel Evans. Who else have I missed anybody out? And there's plenty more wanted to be here. So we've got a huge amount of supporters of the job here, and I can see the office staff of a number of other members of Parliament here, because actually it's something that's taken very, very seriously. So that was why I was delighted to come along. But also, we've been going through, I think, some difficult times in the pub business. I was telling one of your colleagues a long, long time ago, I used to use a pub down in Gidea Park in Romford when I was a councillor, which was actually owned by Jimmy Greaves, and somewhere there's a picture of Jim and I doing the potting up early on New Year's Day after things had gone on a bit and we were helping out the manager. Now, you know and I know that the pub trade involves long hours, it involves very hard work, the margins are tighter than many people think, particularly in relation to the wet trade. And there have been a lot of pressures on the industry. And that's why, for a raft of reasons, we've been seeing a lot of pubs closing. And CAMRA has done its level best to maintain and support community pubs, but we have seen something in the average about 572 odd pubs be lost, not just through closures where it was sort of commercially inevitable, because the demographics had changed, but where very often restrictive covenants have been a problem. And although there's a legitimate role to some degree, we are concerned that the use of restrictive covenants in particular can mean that the pub is lost to a community forever. And in many parts of the world, the pub is very often one of the few remaining focal points within particularly a village, but I say as a London MP, sometimes within a suburban community as well. And I can think of one ward in my constituency where the pub and the post office are probably the two things that give people a sense of identity still and where they come together, and one of those is under threat from a fast food chain, need I say no more. So that, I think, demonstrates the issue in a very real way. And although I recognise the work that has been done on a voluntary basis by the sector to reduce the use of restrictive covenants, I do still think there's an issue. And therefore, I was particularly pleased to be able to come along today, Colin, and announce that the government is launching a formal consultation on the operation of restrictive covenants within the pub trade, and in particular their impact upon communities. There's been a lot of work that's been done looking at the competition aspects of this, but I want, because our department is concerned about communities, I want to concentrate in particular on building an up-to-date evidence base for what's the impact that the use of restrictive covenants has upon the pub as a community facility. Now, we're already, as a government, doing things to help in that regard. We're giving, after all, communities the right to protect and save important local assets through our community right to bid. The ability to have an asset being listed of community value and then have a window in which you can get a bid together, so that if it is viable, then the community themselves can have a chance to come in and take it over. Now, there is a risk, of course, that an indiscriminate use of restrictive covenants might thwart that objective that Parliament has endorsed. So that's why it's particularly appropriate, it seems to me, to conduct a full inquiry into the community impacts of the use of restrictive covenants. I hope that all sections of the trade will involve themselves in that. It will run for 12 weeks, that's the normal consultation period, and I hope very much that everybody who is here today, either as enthusiasts for the beer trade, as people who are one way or other involved in the business, a business which employs many thousands of people and produces very significant net benefit to the UK economy as well as to the Treasury, that people will get involved in that consultation and give us a firm evidence base that I hope I can then take back to my colleagues in government as giving us a sensible way forward to negotiate what isn't an easy matter, but one which I do think we need to address. So after a lot of talk about the importance of community pubs, the coalition government has, I think, yet again determined to act. So we've seen the steps taken in the localism bill, and now I hope this consultation is part of a further set of work that we're doing to give community pubs the sort of profile and the sort of protection that, where they are viable, they ought to be able to deserve. So thank you very much for this invitation. I hope to be sitting down at some point in the autumn and reading all your responses, which will not have been written today because I will be able to work out where the beer stains were, but will have been done in a very considered way, because finally I was going to say this: I appreciate the very considered and well-based approach that CAMRA in particular has adopted to its work in this, as have the other key players in the sector. Your credibility has been greatly enhanced by the work that your professional team in the office have done around this, and I certainly want to thank them for the very positive way in which they've engaged with me and my officials. So that's more than enough from me. You don't want a speech which is longer than the Minister, though in my case that's almost inevitable. But at all events, delighted to come along, delighted to bang the drum for the pub trade, and I know all of my parliamentary colleagues here are out rooting for you and going to be keeping me and everybody else to the mark. But I hope that we can use this as yet another positive step to enhance the value that CAMRA seeks and we seek to give to good beer, good pubs, a good community spirit that goes with them, and a healthy and viable trade that's necessary to make that work. So thank you very much, Colin.